Hello and welcome back to Wine Reform. We are back with our regularly scheduled wines around the world, and today we're going to be trying a French wine. Now, disclaimer, I will do my darndest to pronounce these properly. However, please allow a margin of error, as I am an American with English as my first language, and I have also never taken French in high school. Bear that in mind. So let's talk about Savoie. Savoie is a region on the northern part of France, sort of on the border with Switzerland, and it is in the foothills of the Alps. And as it is here, or there rather, the area is extremely mountainous, and the vineyards are often perched on very steep mountainsides. Interestingly, the region actually exports more grapevines than they do wines. Literally. About 20 million plants are grown in nurseries and exported every year. Savoie's wine is mostly drunk by local skiers and hikers who are, in town, just got down from the mountain and they're looking for something to drink. So not a lot of their wine actually gets exported. Savoie has two main appellations, and an appellation is a protected designation of origin, and this means it is a recognized general wine region, and they have 21 crus. Now, a cru is a sort of small, trusted, established elite group of villages which make up a recognized French wine region, and you usually get very consistent wines from these crus. So one of those 21 crus is Savoie Apremont, and that is where our Jacquére is from. So, Apremont's crus. Apremont's cru vineyards are in Saint Badolph, Les Marches, and Apremont proper. However, to add a little bit of confusion, some of the vines in Apremont are actually used for wines in the village over of Appellation. Apremont has some killer terroir, and I mean that literally. In the 1200s, there was a landslide from Mont Granier that actually swept through the villages of this area and killed thousands. However, centuries later, that has left 3 miles of limestone rubble in which grapes actually thrive. The porous limestone and the easy draining of water through that rubble actually makes for really great vine conditions. And the rubble actually retains heat very well, so it can keep the vines warm throughout the day. Beyond the soil in Apremont being prime for these grapevines, Apremont is actually one of those regions where the side of the mountain that the vines are on plays a really huge impact on what your wine's going to be like. So when talking about these factors, they are referred to as slope and aspect. Slope being the steepness of the mountain, and aspect is actually the cardinal direction that the mountain is facing. The vines in Apremont are on the side of the mountain which faces east, which I guess if you guys are looking at it, east is that way. This means that they get beautiful sunshine in the morning, which helps to dry out any damp from the night, and they keep the vines very warm and dry. Alright, so region of Apremont aside, Apremont within Savoie, let's talk about the grape, Jacquére. So this grape actually counts for about half of Savoie's wine. Jacquére has been described as clean and fresh and alpine. It's actually really tough to find this one outside of France, and so I'm very lucky to have received one as a gift. As this grape is grown in a very cool and mountainous climate, the result is a very high acid grape. So the grapes also have huge green characteristics, that being herbaceousness, freshly cut grass, green apple, pears, and even touches of citrus and minerality. According to wine critics, Jacquére is regarded as more of a simple and delicious wine rather than a great one. And this likely has to do with the fact that Jacquére is grown with very high yields, and this is extremely uncommon for quality wine grapes. A high yield being how many grapes are grown per area, and usually that's kept pretty low in any sort of vineyard to try to focus, concentrate all the sugars, the acids, and the flavors into a small select few grapes. But with Jacquére, that's different. They have more per area. However, the wine techniques for producing Jacquére has significantly improved since the 80s, and so winemakers of Apremont are able to create a good wine. So today we are trying Les Rocailles Apremont Appellation Vin de Savoie Jacquére. So this wine, it only said on the back that it was made from the Jacquére grape because it's kind of implied that if it's from this region, that's what you're getting. Also, you can see the Alps. Look at that. And this flag is actually very common to see on wines from this region because the region of Apremont, or the general region of Savoie, didn't always belong to France. Fun fact. So I was very lucky to receive this wine as a gift from my mother and father, so thanks Mom and Dad. And I am really excited to open it. Oh, one more thing that I learned about wines made from Jacquére that I thought would be really cool to mention is it is traditionally the wine used when making fondue. So if you want to go ahead and do that, highly recommend it. I love me some fondue, and I bet you would too. Alrighty, so I think now we're gonna go ahead and get this wine open and evaluate it. So the first thing we do when we are evaluating wine is we take a look at the appearance. When we look at appearance, we are looking for a couple things: clarity, color, and intensity. So let's see what we get. Got my handy dandy white sheet of paper, and we're gonna go ahead and take a look. All right, so we got a few things going on. We have the most pale intensity, so very pale. Actually, the color kind of reminds me of that Assyrtiko that we tried weeks ago. It has the same sort of color and the same sort of intensity. It's a very, very pale, very, very pale lemon yellow. I can honestly see all the way through it. And the clarity is impeccable. It really is truly impeccable. So, good job on this one. Beautiful. So now we have given a look at the appearance. We get to do the fun part, in my opinion. We are evaluating the nose. So with wines, you can, well, with the most impressive wines, really, you can get 3 levels of aromas. You get your primary aromas, which are any sort of fruitiness or herbaceousness or spices or just things that feel more fresh. Those aromas are your primary aromas, and they come from the grape itself or the process of fermentation for that wine. Your second level of aromas is going to be any aromas you get from the post-fermentation process. So that could be any sort of yeast contact with the lees, any sort of autolysis, maybe a little bit of batonnage happening. You can have a secondary aroma, a compound from any malolactic conversions, which if you've ever had a buttery Chardonnay, that's where that comes from. And then you can also get those secondary aromas from oak, which really tend to come through as vanilla or coconut or like wood or chocolate, just sort of those, well, I would describe them as like the fancy, like the really fancy flavors, if you will. And then if you're having a very old wine, then you can get a third level of aromas, the tertiary aromas, and those really happen from the maturation process. So how long has it been in the bottle and how long has that wine evolved? And that will really give you like leather or earth or like dried fruit, any sort of maybe hazelnut or honey or caramel, almonds or chocolate, or just really developed aromas that kind of feel a bit more nutty or a bit more earthy, maybe a little umami. That's what happens with that third level of aromas. With this wine, I really expect us to only get those primary aromas, so I'm really only expecting to get any sort of fruitiness or any herbaceousness or, you know, the things that have been described. So let's give it a sniff and see what we get. Okay, So as suspected, we really only got those primary aromas. I got very strong green apple and pear and gooseberry and lemon. I got the tiniest bit of what I would maybe describe as lemongrass. And then there was a little bit of a saltiness to it, but it was very faint. This one smelled a lot more fruit forward, so that was quite pleasant. The intensity of the nose was very medium. I definitely, yeah, I held it right here, and I got a pretty good whiff of it right away. So yeah, extremely fruit forward, a little bit of salinity and a little bit of that lemongrass, and medium intensity, so it smells quite pleasant. It is, as far as Jacquére has been described to me, this feels pretty complex, even though it only has that primary level of aroma. So now, why don't we go ahead and move on to our third step in evaluation, giving it a taste, evaluating the palate. So now we're gonna go ahead and see if we could taste everything we smelled, and we'll see what else we can glean from that. So let's sip. Cheers. Okay, so I could taste everything that I smelled. It was nice to know that everything that came forward in the nose came forward in the palate. It was a dry wine, that's for certain. However, it tasted very fruity, so extremely pleasant. The acidity was very high. It made me pucker and salivate as soon as it touched my tongue, so refreshing. The alcohol felt medium, so that was pretty nice, and the finish was very short. In terms of any sort of mouth feel, very watery, very refreshing, easy drinking, I will say. Oh, we are at 11.5% for this bottle, so medium. Honestly, I thought this was really, really good. I do agree that it is not, again, it's not the most complex wine. It's not gonna be, it doesn't have those 3 layers of aromas and flavors, but it is good. It really is, and I do think that it's definitely worth giving a try, and I can see why it would work very well in fondue now that I have tasted it. I can see this complementing maybe nutty cheeses very well. I will say that I actually personally would totally enjoy this with any sort of eggs Benedict. I think it would be really good with that kind of meal. So if I'm having brunch and I finish my coffee, well, I'm not gonna have this right after coffee. I'll probably like coffee and then a glass of water, and then I'll have this with my eggs Benedict. But like I do think it will work very well with that sort of brunch meal, hollandaise sauce, and like a toasted, that would be good. So yeah, I can see this working very well with obviously fondue and any sort of brunch, savory brunch dish that's maybe a more traditional brunch / breakfast dish. And this feels like a really good wine to drink during the daylight hours. So if you're on vacation, I think this would be a really good addition to that. It just makes me want to bask in the sun, but we have no sun today. Like none whatsoever. It's been like overcast all day. This will be my sun. I like plants, so we'll surround ourselves in plants. I think this wine goes very well with plants. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Wine Reform. It has been a pleasure to get back to wines around the world, and we finally tried a wine from France. So that's pretty exciting. Of course, I wanted to try one from a region that's maybe not the Loire or the Rhone or whatever, because those are important, but you know, if you know wine, it's what you know about. So I think it's really fun to start with something that people who just know wine maybe don't know about as much, which Apremont being one of them. So yeah, it felt really good to get back to trying wine from not where I'm from, which is a blast for me. And I hope you guys enjoy learning about these wines as much as I do, because there's a whole world of wine out there, and I think it's really fun to explore, you know? If you liked what you saw, be sure to give me a thumbs up. It lets me know I'm doing something right, and it lets YouTube know that other people who like wine should totally check it out, which is pretty cool because, you know, if you like wine, you want to learn more about it, right? So you're helping them out. You're doing them a favor. Pat yourself on the back. You're doing great. And if you really like what you saw and you haven't done so already, then be sure to hit that subscribe button. I release videos every single Friday, all about wine related content, and so usually there's, you know, if you haven't found something you like yet, I will probably put out something that you do like, so definitely hit that subscribe. And because we are all in different time zones, be sure to hit the bell icon next to the subscribe button somewhere, and that will give you a notification when I do release a video. That way you can know as soon as I put it out. Yeah, actually I'm curious, what's your favorite brunch food? Because we're approaching brunch season, and even if we can't go out for that because it might not always be the safest, we can still enjoy brunch from home, so what's your favorite brunch food? Drop it in the comments. And with that being said, I will see you guys all next week, and I have a special surprise, and I look forward to sharing it, so that'll be fun. In the meantime, go sniff some flowers and go like hug a tree or whatever, because it's getting warmer and we should totally do that. French.
Rocaille or rocaille.
If you're happy and you know it, open wine. If you're happy and you know it, open wine. If you're happy and you know it, then your pour will surely show it. If you're happy and you know it, open wine. If you're happy, oh, I dropped something.